What is going on, you wonderful people out there on YouTube? This is Ryan, and this is a special video in which I will be commemorating 30 years of The Legend of Zelda. I think I can speak for just about everybody when I say that The Legend of Zelda is one of the greatest franchises to ever come from Nintendo and video games alike. It's just, it's rich with story. Every single series in the franchise has something different and memorable about it, and I mean, there's so much great things to be said about this series. I can't even express it in one statement alone. Now, with that being said, I'm not going to go super crazy about this, but this was something I definitely wanted to do because it is 30 years, and this is very, very big. I can't even express how excited I am for the new Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild to come out on the Wii U and NX. There's all these remakes being made that all look absolutely beautiful. Now, some people would argue that the remakes are just they're just trying to sell copies and stuff, but I'm not gonna lie. You see remakes being made all the time, so why is Zelda any different? They're not. In that case, I mean, you have remakes of Resident Evil come up all the time. There's remakes of Halo and stuff. So to see remakes of Legend of Zelda, it's alright with me. I mean, I guess there are some games that I feel like don't really need remakes. Twilight Princess did not necessarily need it, but I'm not complaining that they did because it does look beautiful now. It did back then, but they were able to enhance it and make it look even better. And then especially looking at like Ocarina of Time, because back in the 64 era, of course, it was a bit choppy. Although you leave it up to the imagination and it's fine with people. But when they were able to remake that, that was a really big deal, and it looks absolutely beautiful on the 3DS. Now, my first experience with The Legend of Zelda, honestly, it was not the Nintendo era by any means. It was actually in the Super Nintendo era with A Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. It was a game changer for me. It was this action adventure, just rich in story. I mean, it's funny because when I first played Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, and I was getting into RPGs at the same time, I pretty much thought The Legend of Zelda was an RPG until I learned what made an RPG what it is. But with this game being so rich in story, that was the one thing I knew about RPGs. There was always a story to be told, there was a plot, there was all sorts of theming, and all this stuff going on. And when I was a kid, I didn't really know. I always called it an RPG, but it really isn't. It's more of an action game, and I mean, even at times, especially when you got into the 3D realm of it all, it became like a platformer too in its own right. But my first experience was playing Link to the Past. I remember it so vividly when you collect the first 3 gems and then you use them to pull out the Master Sword. And I think the thing that got me when I was a kid was I saw commercials for it, and I saw all the praises it was getting from friends, from reviewers and stuff like that. It was going to be big. It was going to be a big game, and it blew me away. And then when I actually got into it and started playing it, and they were talking about you're going to be getting this Master Sword, and when you finally get the Master Sword, I'm sitting here thinking, is this game almost over? Like it, you know what I mean? It just seemed like, holy crap! I got the Master Sword. That was the one thing I needed. Now I'm going to go and slay Ganon, and that it was really still just the beginning. It's just for back then, it's not, or for right now, it's not really that big a deal. I mean, you see that kind of things all the time in video games. You think you're almost done, but you're not even halfway there. now we're going to get to the part of the video that most of you probably skipped to be able to watch. And I decided to pick my top 3 favorite Legend of Zelda games. And it was really, really hard. It's even harder when you haven't played some of them. But out of the ones I played, I'm going to give you a top 3 of my favorite Zelda games. My number 3, I actually can't find my copy right now, so that might be something I'm going to have to rebuy at some point. Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass for the Nintendo DS. Now, this one sticks with me for quite a few reasons. One of the big reasons I think would have to be that when I played this game, I actually played it with a friend, and by that I mean my best friend and I. We would hang out for extended periods of time. We would be sitting on the couch or just whatever. We could be out and about, and then if we had some free time and we weren't really doing anything, I would have the DS on me and we would play Phantom Hourglass, and we played through that game together. We beat it together, and it was just such a fun experience. I mean, it's always fun to play games with people, but with Phantom Hourglass, it did something different. I mean, the whole idea that when you go into a dungeon, especially during certain parts, you actually were given like a time limit. It gave you kind of like almost like a Majora's Mask type feel to it. You had a time limit in which you had to go through dungeons, and it was just really different. I love the idea of solving puzzles through using the stylus, and you do it on the bottom half of your DS, and you can mark places on your map. That was really cool. It was like every time you knew there was something out there and you had to get to there at some point, you can just make marks on the map and they'd stay on there. And then if you went off and did something else, but you could always come back and you look at your map and all that stuff was still there, and you could remember, oh hey, there's a side quest out there, I can go out there. Now with that game, I didn't go out of my way to completely like get all the side quests, but the few that I did were just a lot of fun, and the story itself was just really great too. It was really different, and it strayed from the path. When it comes to change in video games, I do get excited for it because I like to play new things. I want to see something different. And my number 2, which I just mentioned while talking about Phantom Hourglass, would definitely be Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Now, I'm sure I'm hearing a lot of crickets out there and people being like, really? Majora's Mask? Hold on a minute. Yes, it's not Ocarina of Time, and I guess a lot of that comes from the fact that Ocarina of Time was great. It really, really was. The story was phenomenal. Classic game. Majora's Mask took it a step further. This is more or less like a prequel kind of deal. When you think about it in the form of the Zelda timeline. When I think of Majora's Mask, I think of this is what happened previous to the events of Ocarina of Time. I know technically that's not how it works via the timeline, but the idea that you're young Link and you got transformed into a Deku, and you have to try and transform yourself back within 3 days was great, and then you just keep going back and back and back within that 3-day cycle, and you got to try to get all this stuff done within 3 days. Throw in the dark edge that comes with Majora's Mask and the Skull Kid who now has the mask on. It was very different. It was edgy and it was great. Everything about it was phenomenal. For me, it took Ocarina of Time and actually both expanded and condensed it, because you're stuck in this one town and you venture off to these different lands and you're trying to gather all this information and gather up all the masks and all your tools, and you're gonna go fight the Skull Kid and you're gonna go and kick his ass and shit. It basically there's something about it. It was just it's so much fun to play. A lot of collectibles, which I do firmly enjoy collecting things in video games. And now for my number one, my most favorite Legend of Zelda game of all time. You probably guessed it by now. Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. You can argue that this is a nostalgia trip coming from a Legend of Zelda fan, but this is also just one of those games. I think the thing that I enjoy the most about video games is there's so many great games out there that you can just pop in at a moment's notice and you can just have a blast with it. I've beaten this game at least 12 times by now in my entire life. I normally do not like to visit a game like immediately after beating it, so like if I were to beat this, you wouldn't see me play it a week later, but in 6 months, 8 months, a year, I might pop it back in, and I'll probably play through the entire damn thing. That is what The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past is like with me. All the way to a point that I had this when I was a kid, growing up. This is not my original copy. I got this from one of my great friends. But when I was a kid, I did, for my birthday, I believe, ask my parents to give me this, which was the one with 4 swords, for the Game Boy Advance, and this is actually my original copy. This was my childhood, and I absolutely loved playing this game on the go too. It was way too much fun, and the fact that I now had The Legend of Zelda on the go, it was so good. The plot is simple, and it's just so much fun. It gave you your original Legend of Zelda feel, but enhanced graphics, different story, just gripping the entire time. Just everything about it was phenomenal. I believe that the idea with the whole chicken thing started with A Link to the Past, where you can just keep hammering a chicken with your sword, and then all of a sudden Bop comes and tries to just beat the shit out of you, and you were like, oh my god, I gotta get the hell out of here. It originated with A Link to the Past, and then you saw it happen in Ocarina of Time, and it was just, little things like that are really cool. I just remember playing this game so vividly, and like I mentioned before, getting the 3 gems and getting the Master Sword so early in the game, you felt like an absolute badass, but then you get teleported back to the Dark World, and you're like, fuck, how the hell am I going to get everything back in order and reclaim the princess and all this stuff? It was just, everything about this game was just absolutely amazing. The sprite graphics in the 16-bit era, just so good, so rich, and it's just a game I could pop in at any time and just be amazed that I'm playing such a phenomenal game right from beginning all the way up to the end. And I just cannot say anything more to recommend this game. But all these games, they were really great. I wish I had my Phantom Hourglass as well, but I don't. But I can't recommend the Legend of Zelda franchise anymore to anybody else that I can right now. It's phenomenal that it's been 30 years, and next year we should be seeing Breath of the Wild. It looks absolutely great. If you want, you can see my reaction to the E3 gameplay that it has. I'm going to leave a link down below for that video. Go ahead and check it out. You can hear my reaction firsthand. It was just, I can't wait for another 30 years of Zelda. I will still be playing Zelda games 30 years from now. I can promise you that. But that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys for watching all the way through here. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you want to talk more about Zeldas, what are your favorite Zeldas? And what was your first Zelda? I would love to know in the comments down below. And if this is your first video, feel free to subscribe if you like what you see. And until next time, guys, you guys take care.